Welcome back, or welcome to As Above, So Below podcasts. Your hosts are Gunnar Regan and my friend here, Andrew Swasey. If you've listened to us before, we are all about our goal of inspiring self-responsibility through honest, open, and insightful conversations. Today, our plan is to do just that. And when we think about planning, we might think about goals. You've heard all the cliches. A goal is a dream written down, or if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. All those cliche bullshit, honestly. Well, what we're really here for today is talking about why goals are important for us as individuals, why we teach the process of goal setting to our clients, as well as other pieces in there that influence the life that we live. And we hope you get something out of this discussion today, because goals are, I'm going to say, the favorite thing that we teach to new clients, because without structure to where we're going, we don't get anywhere. So with that in mind, goal setting is a lot of things. We're going to touch on as much of that as possible today. I'm going to pass this over to Andrew to start us off. Why do you set goals with your clients, Andrew?
Well, the reason why I set goals is I help my clients accomplish their goals. That's the main reason why. But no, like what you said, we set goals so we can have a vision for a future outcome. As far as goals go, I even like to take a step back, even from talking about how I set goals with my clients, talking about like what it is, like how do I describe goals, like what do goals mean to me. And goals are really, they're just desires. It's a desire that you have for that things could be different in the future. Like you're envisioning a future state that is either subjectively or objectively better than your current state. I definitely say that there has to be a better component to a goals, meaning that your current or that your future state is going to be better than your current state, however you decide to measure that. So a lot of people, when they come to me as far as setting goals, they have a desire to be healthier. They have a desire to improve their fitness and their ability to move, and hence improve the overall quality of their life. So when it comes to setting goals with my clients, there's a couple of things that I do a little bit differently than when I set goals for myself, primarily because the time frame is a little bit different when I'm working with a new client, or we're working in a little bit more of a shorter time frame rather than a larger time frame, which I use for myself. So the first thing that I do when I'm setting goals with my clients is I help them really, or at least I really try to understand what it is about their goal that's important to them. Really try and understand the motivation for having this specific goal, like what about it is important to them. And that's really important, because a lot of people come to me as someone who specializes in health and fitness, and they say the really objective quantitative goals, like I want to lose 10 pounds of fat, or I want to put 20 pounds of weight on my bench press, or whatever the specific goal might be. Although there's usually some deeper motivations or reasoning behind wanting to accomplish that goal, some deeper desires, right? Most people don't just want to lose fat. They want to lose fat because some other reason, right? And we talk about, when we work with our clients, adding a because statement to the specific goal really adds a lot of power and a lot of oomph behind it. So the first step I do when I'm working with my clients is we project out about a year in advance and say, okay, you've accomplished this goal. Like, what is different about your life? How are things different in the future when you've accomplished this goal than it is now? And I try and put them into a state where they're the thinking further out, like, what is this better, or what does this future self look like, and how is it better than where I'm at right now? And that's usually like the first place I start when I work with my clients in goal setting. I'm curious, Gunnar, like when you're first starting off in that goal setting process with your clients, we talked about, it's one of the first things we do when we interact with the client. Where do you start? Where do you start to get the understanding where your client's at and where they want to be?
The place that I tend to start with my clients, let's say this is a intro call, first time talking to a new client or prospective client, I aim the conversation to start understanding why they're talking to me. Where did they hear about me? What is that relationship? And going off of previous conversations we've had on this podcast, it comes down to curiosity. And I can go in to a conversation without curiosity, and I can tell someone exactly what they want to hear, but that is not always, and most likely not, what they actually want. So that discussion starts, all right, how do I create the relationship? By asking them questions, being curious about, all right, where have you been? Who have you worked with before? What were the results? What did you like about that? Having all these different questions and gathering as much information as possible.
A lot of rapport building too.
Totally. Yeah. Like the coaching is all about the relationship, right? Like we build trust. We build trust in the ability to relate to others. And that's by asking questions. And then we can start to get into, all right, like you were saying, projecting out in a year, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years, whatever it is, could even be a decade. And understanding, all right, where do you want to be? And having that image in your mind becomes our default for what's possible. The reason we set goals, and I'm going to use that intentionally, we set goals, but we write them down to create tangible actions to follow. So where I start with the client, like I said, is building that rapport, building the relationship, and then we can really understand what goals are going to be of value. So like you mentioned, if someone's goal is, I want to lose 10 pounds of body fat or whatever metric they choose. My intention there as a coach is to understand why that's important. And this reminds me of a framework that Simon Sinek talks about, and one of my coaches, Maury, has brought up to me in the past of we want to center in on the why, right? That middle bullseye kind of concentric circle model that we talked about in our previous episode. The why is in the middle. The why is where we want to aim. And then we can build out from there to give structure, right? Why is important? Why are we going for this? And then we can decide what methods we need to put in place to get to the why. All right. So that's that next layer. And what you were talking about there is the because statement, right? Let's say the goal is, I want to lose this amount of body fat. What are we going to do to get there? What do we have at our disposal to make it happen? And we can relate that back to, because I am a healthier person at the end of this. I can pick up my grandchildren in the future. I can lower my health care insurance, right? Whatever those things are, those are all important. Those are whys. The what then gives us structure. And then from there, how we implement it is that outside circle. So why in the middle, what, and then surrounded by how is where working with the coach or getting a piece of equipment that's going to allow you to get towards that why. To bring that back, goal setting is all about understanding why someone wants to do something and then giving structure to what that is.
Mhm.
The why is always going to be underlying. Another way we can state that as well is our why. We can ask why that's important, and that becomes an expanded purpose.
Mm.
I can give even more. I can give you more intention behind what I want to get. So, if my goal as a coach is to serve 6 athletes in their mental skills training, why is that important? Becomes my expanded purpose. Why? Because I believe the world needs more leaders. I believe my coaching is going to give individual athletes the confidence to be a leader on a team, to improve their skills on the field or on the ice in most of my clients' environments, right? Those are important. And those expanded purposes not only give importance, but they give me excitement. They build on what I can do. So I want to
Excitement from a coaching standpoint, or from like you setting a goal for yourself type of standpoint?
both, because as a coach, having that expanded purpose of why we're going after our original why, right? If I want to be the greatest hockey player in the world, well, why is that important? Why? Because it means I've worked on myself to improve skills, to improve my communication as a teammate, as a peer, as a son, as a daughter, whatever that is. Those expanded purposes give us this momentum, if you will, emotional momentum. I'm gonna have to write that down because I'm gonna use that in the future. The emotional momentum carries through in the expanded purpose. And we can continue to ask ourselves, why is this important? Why is this valuable to me? Why is this helpful to others? That's so valuable. And we're being redundant here. I'm being redundant here. It's valuable to me as a coach because I see clients achieving more when they understand why they're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then for myself, if I'm able to detach from that like up close and personal thing and see like, all right, where am I really going?
Mm-hmm.
Is this still aligned with what I want? If it is, keep going. If it's not, take different action
Yeah.
and maybe rewrite the goal,
Mm-hmm.
rewrite the mission. So yeah, where are you thinking there?
Well, I'm curious because I know as a coach you work with a lot of athletes, and athletes tend to be different than the general population when it comes to someone that you coach. And I'm curious, like typically when you work with athletes and they're very motivated, they're very focused, they typically already have goals in mind. They typically already know what they want. I'm curious when, if you work with clients that are outside of like the athletic spectrum, they're more of like a general individual, like why is that, or for those types of people's, why is it important that they also have goals too? Like besides just, I know you're talking about like trying to create leadership, for these younger athletes who are coming up as hockey players. But I'm curious, like even for just like the general person out there, why is it important for them to have goals as well? Or is there any, like, I guess like maybe a better question to ask be like, is there any type of distinctions that you create when setting goals between those types of clients and everyday people?
Oh, I appreciate the rephrasing there. I love goals for every type of person I work with because our language is the key to how we relate to the world.
Mm-hmm.
So when we are writing goals, and if you're working with me one-on-one, we're gonna really dial in what we're saying. It's not a one day I will do this, right? That's some fluffy BS. That's
That's future tense when we write goals. we use past tense. Like we've
Right.
already accomplished them.
So an example of that is, by this date, I have done.
Mm-hmm.
To make that a specific goal, by August 2025, I have won the CrossFit Games.
Ooh, that's a big goal.
It is a big goal because, here's my why statement, because I have found my best effort in all of my training. And I will be the fittest man on earth. And I believe in myself.
There you go. I like what you did there. You added some mantras to that goal.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, touching on that, why I state them in that structure, the I statements,
Mm-hmm.
is it becomes my identity the more often I say it. So I believe we've touched on this in the past. However, it's so valuable now. When I have a goal, I want to be able to see my future self doing that. And the way I can relate to that future image in my mind is to write down what I see. And those will become my I statements. And my I statements are mantras. And to use the definition of mantra, mantra is a word or a phrase or a sound that you repeat frequently with intention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another way I like interpret that is it's an affirmation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when we are setting goals or creating that future vision for ourselves, we're working on that future self image. We want to create statements that are going to affirm an identity, not negate it, right? Which,
Right.
if you've listened to our podcast for a couple episodes, Gunnar and I are very aware of the language that we use when we say we're not going to do something, or haven't, or anything that is negating what we're saying, rather than affirming what we're saying. And coming back to goal setting, and why that's so powerful is because when we see that future vision of ourselves, we want to affirm that we're having that success for our future self. We want to see ourselves in that spotlight. And it comes back to like a book that I think about, I wouldn't say regularly, but I think about from time to time. I read this year, it's called Psycho-Cybernetics. And it's all about your self-image of yourself and how you perceive yourself. And when you perceive yourself in the future having success with the goals that you're setting for yourself, you're more likely to see the opportunities that will arise when they present themselves that are going to move you closer to that goal. You're going to start to see all the things coming together in a synchronous way. And the likelihood of you accomplishing that goal increases significantly. And I know you work a lot with your clients on the mental skills, associated with being successful. I'd say creating those goals and using that type of mindset is a mental skill, a very valuable one at that. And, circling back around to why goals are so important, and the language that you use around your goals, that can really shape that vision of your mind, your future self, and where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what you're touching on there is the goal itself is important. Writing down the goal is important. What you do with the goal is even more important. How are you relating to that goal daily is how you are going to be able to reach that goal.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you write down a goal, put it on a piece of paper, and then crumple it up, throw it in the corner, and never look at it again, great. You wrote a goal, you did nothing to achieve it. So how do we bridge that gap with our clients, and you were touching on mine, like how do we create those mental skills? Mantras is the foundation. How we talk to ourselves often, repetitively, with intention becomes our ability to practice. And I'm going to use practice here because the mindfulness end state does not exist. Mindfulness is a practice. I've said this before. If I want to be my best self in a competitive arena, in a business arena, in a close relationship, I have to practice all the time so I can perform. I can perform my best. Bless you.
Thank you.
So if you're watching on YouTube, that was a peaceful exchange after a sneeze. And it's so overlooked, in my opinion, when people set a goal, they write it down and then they don't touch on it. It's not a constant thing. So how do I create the mental skill for, I'm going to use my hockey example. For a hockey player, how do we practice working towards our goal every day? We can look at that in a physical practice. It could be, all right, I need to shoot this many pucks before or after practice to improve my shot. Why? Because I am strong. I am powerful. I am diligent. All of these are valuable things. And what you're talking on the affirmation side, I want to affirm myself as often as possible to keep that goal as my North Star or my aligning point.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm curious, kind of tangential to this. I know you kind of break down goals into 3 categories, like outcome goals, process goals, and performance goals. When you're working with your clients on this initial goal setting process, is there a specific type of goal that you focus on? And is there like foundations or layers that you go through when looking at each one of these types of goals?
Yes. The types of goals that you mentioned there, again, outcome, process, and performance, I don't show up trying to write a specific type of goal in those 3 categories. I am more interested on where the client or the athlete starts. Let's say someone that you work with has that year vision. You like project a year out. That is the outcome, right? Lose this much weight. That is something we can measure. That's something we can look back to where they are now when you get to that point. All right, did you meet that outcome? Another way we can look at the goal setting process is the process goal. My goal is to work out, train 4 days a week so I can reach that outcome. When we get into the process goals and we're thinking about why we're writing a process goal, that is giving importance to learning and improving, where the outcome goal is often exactly that. It's the outcome. It's what
it's
we
like
want.
It's the result, right? The process is the steps along the way in achieving that specific result, right?
Yes.
Kind of like breaking it down in a way. Is that accurate?
Yeah, exactly. And maybe this addition, the performance goal can fit in both of those. But the way I look at a performance goal is, all right, if my process goal is I'm going to train this many times a week. My performance goal is I want to give 100% effort in each training session. So it's sort of that Russian nesting doll idea. The outcome is the large, big idea that we're working towards long term. The process goal is what are the steps that I need to be implementing to get there? And my performance goal is closer to me. It's more focus and alignment that allows me to show up in the process, do my best.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. I have like a similar process when I'm working with clients to start from the big overarching goal and chunk it down into smaller pieces. I start off, with obviously, I think it would be the performance or the process, the outcome would be kind of like the pinnacle as far as the goals, right? That's what's the result we're trying to achieve. So then from there, I break it down into skills, and skills is tangential to what you're saying about the identity. Like, who is the person that I need to be to accomplish those kind of goals? Like, what's the type of person I need to be to lose? Let's say if someone wants to lose the weight, right, that we're talking about here, to lose body fat. What do people who successfully lose body fat, what are the skills that they have? And then how do they keep it there? Then from there, you break it down. You have goals, you have skills, then you have practices. And practices then break down into daily actions. And practices and daily actions, to me, are what are the language you use are more as like the process oriented goals, where it's the chunks that you're going to be taking along the way, or the processes that you're completing along the way to becoming the person who has the skills that allows you to accomplish the goals. And it's so to me, like with this type of system that we use for setting our goals and like working our way backwards, it's so important to have like that vision set up, like those affirmations, those mantras set up. And I look at the affirmations and the mantras they're like the daily actions. They're part of those daily actions and practices that we do that allows us to develop the skills that we need to mentally visualize ourselves being that successful person, that new identity, right? And then those are kind of like the mental skills associated with accomplishing the goals. And then of course there's the actionable skills. Say if you're, like you said, wanting to lose weight or wanting to be a high performing athlete, you have to show up in the gym, you have to show up and exercise, take care of those actions as well. And they require, consistency on a regular basis to be successful over the long run, right? So I really like that there was a lot of overlap as far as like how we break down goals and to synthesize them down into like chewable steps that people can take on a regular basis. And we talk about the concept of momentum as well. And when you're working on setting a goal, a lot of times we set large, ambitious goals for ourselves. And myself personally, I can feel like it feels daunting sometimes when I have these goals that I set for myself. Especially, I know you and we will look 5 to 10 years out as far as where we want to be in accomplishing our goals. And you have to take a breath. Like, wow, that's sometimes you think about it, and it's like, that's a big goal. Like, how am I going to get there? And I think of the expression, like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. What's the step that you can take to today that's going to move you closer towards your goal? And that's part of the daily actions, that's part of the processes and becoming successful in accomplishing your goals. And it's interesting to think, like, to bring up for me, because I notice with myself that I get caught in like this like daydreaming kind of state where you're thinking so far out about your goals, it might produce some anxiety provoking thoughts, possibly even negative thoughts, Do you ever encounter those kind of situations with your goals? And if you do, how do you work through those?
Again, the answer is yes. I run into that. The overthinking podcast, I believe, is episode 5.
Mhm.
And the same thing applies when I find myself resistant to taking action towards what I want. The simplest step is the simplest step. Right? What's the first little thing I can do? For me, journaling daily before I go and training being the main process goal for me. My performance in training improves when I'm journaling. So for me, I have my notebook, my pen ready in my truck before I even step outside to go into the gym. I spend 5-10 minutes writing down, what am I thinking about today? What do I want to improve on? Why I'm training? What's that vision for the future? So maybe it's a competition, maybe it's for a sport athlete, maybe it's the next game. Right? Why am I in practice today to improve for my next competition, which is a performance in itself? And how I'm able to navigate that resistance. Another way we could put it is like the anxious or anxiety around training is writing out, I'm here to improve. I'm here to practice. I am here now. This is my moment. This is my opportunity right here. That gives me clarity, gives me that first step that I was talking about. For me, it's writing it down, going in, training. And then I've recently instituted this like last couple months is I'll reflect on what I wrote beforehand before I get out of my truck again, before I go inside to do another, task, whether that's coaching or doing something else. That reflection time has amplified for me the actions. I'm getting past the overthinking and taking that action. All right, I'm here. I'm ready to train. I train to win. I want to win. I am prepared. I show up to competitions my best. All these are, again, affirmations, mantras. That's my daily action step to get into my practice, to get into the process and improve. I can take myself away from thinking of the outcome, which is what you touched on. It can be so large and debilitating in a way. It can freeze you up because it's so big. How do we get away from that freeze and start to take action, practice? So for me, journaling is that step. For you, let's say in any of your athletic endeavors or surfing, if you want to go there, how do you take a goal and then keep yourself in the process or in that immediate performance state?
For me, well, what you're saying, like taking action is by far like the most important aspect to creating momentum around your goals. Just taking action. Of course, like taking action is great if you're starting from inaction. Of course, from there, you want to refine and continue to be intentional around the action that you're taking and make sure that, for example, you're not just being busy, but you're moving yourself in the direction that you want to go specifically. Like, when it comes to my specific goals right now, I notice in my life, most of my goals are focused around my lifestyle and my business, as far as the vision that I have for where I'd like to take my business. Surfing is my, like, the way I describe this, I really enjoy surfing. I enjoy being outside. I enjoy being active. It's great cardiovascular work because I prefer strength training to traditional cardiovascular training. Although a lot of my surfing, I actually focus just on just getting out there, enjoying myself. That's the biggest outcome. I actually started surfing because I was intentional about it being a non-outcome oriented activity besides just getting out there and surfing and enjoying myself. And I keep it that way. So, but coming back to your original question, like, how do I apply this in my life? For my goals, because they're a little bit more subjective and unique to my business and my lifestyle that I want to live, it's the daily actions that keep me in alignment with those. Is like you said, journaling is a big one. Reflecting on where I'm at and constantly looking at my goals. I refer to them in my journal right now as my desires, the desires that I have for myself and the desires that I'd like to have and how I live my life and operate my business and support my clients. When I come back to my desires, it becomes easy to take that action, that next step. Something that I noticed with myself, and coming back to the concept or the topic of overthinking, is when I fall out of practice with my journaling, the overthinking creeps up, and I noticed that the journaling is the anchoring behavior for keeping me consistent and in alignment with my goals and keeping my focus on where it needs to be. So as far as like taking the actions towards creating the lifestyle and the business that I want to have, it's really about setting the time to, like, I created like structures in my schedule. So I am looking at my schedule on a weekly basis and allocating the space and the time I need to do the creative work for my business to make the space to think differently. That's how I find myself being like successful with my goals at this point. Personally, I can get into like a very narrow-minded focus, like a tunnel vision when it comes to goals, which can be great sometimes, although sometimes it can be debilitating when you're trying to have harmony in your life and not just be work, 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 or play, play, play all the time. So for me, it's a calibration of progressing continuing to see my business progress and being intentional about putting in the work and the time to progress my business and how I see I need to progress, whether it's creating new programmings, automating systems in my business, hiring a trainer. These are all things that I'm thinking about. And yeah.
Yeah. So I think it bears a repeating of when you have all of these things going on, it can become overwhelming or really noisy.
Yeah.
Right? There's too much noise. And we were talking about this earlier, is we have all of this noise. How do we create and fine tune that noise to be clear?
Yes.
And for you and I, that journaling process, even if it's 3 lines, like I could write, I am this, I'm here for this, I want this. And that could be specific to that day, that hour. That is that fine tuning, bringing the dial back in to play the song that you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I was just going to share, it's interesting, this thought came up. For me, in most of my life, the majority of my goals majority of my goals for most of my life were associated with sports and specific outcomes, like as far as winning with sports or lifting certain weights, let's say, in when I was competing in weightlifting. And for me, with my goals now, they have become so much more subjective and so less objective, although there's still some objective components to it. It's become so much more subjective, is that a lot of my processes and daily actions they have to be focused around like keeping my behaviors in check, my behaviors in line, so I can continue to move towards those subjective goals, and as well as continuing and creating the structures to continually to check in on those goals and continually ask myself, are these the things that I want in my life right now? And making sure like that infrastructure is set up in place for the exact reasons like I was mentioning earlier, as far as like overthinking and noticing like when I get caught up in other people's goals, not my goals as well. And that's a good pivot point, at least for me in the conversation right now, in creating goals, because I've noticed this because I have done the work. In the past, I've created a lot of goals that I thought were for myself, and they were really for someone else's goals, for someone else, something else that someone else wanted. And I was acting for someone else rather than myself. And as I've gotten an opportunity to better understand what it is that I want, it's become much easier for me to stick to the practices that are going to reinforce the goals that I want to have. I'm curious. I think a lot of this comes through like self-development and personal work, but getting clear on what it is that you desire and why you desire it, I think is just as important as like setting the goal itself. And this kind of like overlaps a little bit with what we were talking about earlier, but I believe that's super important because it allows you to operate out of like inspiration rather than say obligation. And that being a huge component for why we stay motivated to do things, right? And I mean, like one of the examples that I think of, because I had this experience early on in my career as a personal trainer, a husband came to me and wanted his wife to come in and do personal training. And he's like, yeah, I'll pay for it, everything. She doesn't have to worry about it whatsoever, blah, blah, blah. I just want you to do the work with her. And, when I had the conversation with her, she did like, that was not her goal. It was not her accomplishment, or not the thing that she wanted to accomplish. It was her husband's, right? And it was a very short experience. Let's just say that, just because it didn't last very long, And so for me, like understanding where my goals are coming from and knowing that they're my goals and the things that I want in my life has been like one of the biggest practices for me, and keeping my goals and sticking with them as well. Does any of that stick with you or anything?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Another way we could say that is if we're saying yes to everything, specifically things outside of ourselves, those become our responsibilities. Right? That saying yes means you are willing to take responsibility, whether it's a conscious or unconscious decision. What you're saying is saying no to other people's goals gives you time to reflect on what you actually want. And that desire of yours becomes the goal. And then we can take the action steps from there. The reason we started this podcast was we set the goal to talk about self-responsibility. And in my experience, I said yes to this in having ongoing conversations. Therefore, it's my responsibility to show up and give my best. Now that could be my own personal beliefs. If I'm going to say yes to something, I'm going to give my best. That could be someone else's decision to do something different. However, we come back to it. when we can discern between yes and no, often the most simple answer, right? Yes or no, we can start to tweak. And I believe it's Pavlov's cats on
Um,
Occam's razor. I'm just,
Pavlov's dogs.
yeah, Pavlov's dogs, Schrodinger's cats, and Occam's razor. However, it's really Schrodinger's cats here, right? When we alter one little thing, it becomes more clear what we're going after. And when we can continually practice that, we have the big outcome goal. We can be in the process and practice. What is the one thing that I can prove on here? Or I can say one thing I can say yes to with full awareness. That's where we're going to see improvements. And I I really appreciate you sharing that you had a moment of time where you worked with someone that their goal was not to work with you. I've also experienced this where I skipped that process of setting a goal with a client or having that shared understanding of why we're working together. It did not last. And in transparency, it stuck with me for a while. The first time it happened, I was like, man, I'm a shitty coach. I'm like, I didn't help this person. I gave myself time. I worked through that personally. And it came to a point where I was not meant to help that person because they did not want help. They didn't know their goal because I didn't ask. So that divide, once it happened again for other reasons, that I was able to let that client go or let the next client go because we were not understanding where the client wanted and how I can help serve them to get to that goal. Yeah. So why is this important? Why are we talking about goals today? Is as soon as I can write something down, I can give an image to it. I can get it out of my mind. Now that it's written down, it's something tangible. I can look at it. I can add to it. And there's something to go back on. Where did I start? Where is this going? And as soon as I say, yes, this is my goal, it's now my responsibility. As a coach, going through that process of setting a goal with a client gives us clarity that we're both working on the same page. When we both say, yes, this is what you want, I will help you get there. Because if we miss that, it just sounds, I will help you get wherever you think you need to go. Mm-hmm. And then I could give you a training plan, or I could talk to you and have no bearing on what you're actually going through, what you actually want. So the goal setting process for me as a coach is the relationship. Right? We're setting boundaries on how we're going to act, what we're going to do when we meet, what you're going to do on your own, and how those actions look. So boundaries, I think, are also a valuable product of goal setting, because most people, I would blanket statement, most people lack boundaries. So in goal setting process, we can start to see those actions, those daily practices. They're actually boundaries to keep us going towards what we want. Again, this could be abstract if you're listening, but think about it. If I don't know where I want to go, I'm going to let anything push me around.
The tide will just take you wherever it goes. Yeah.
Yeah. The wind has no plan. The wind will push you around.
Yeah.
The beauty as human beings, we have the ability to project into the future, see ourselves as a better version, a stronger version, a healthier version of ourselves. That's all about the future. What we do right now requires boundaries to make sure we get to that future image, the goal, the outcome. Where do boundaries show up for you, Andrew, both in coaching and for yourself? What are the boundaries that you like to set or help people set?
When it comes to my personal life, the boundaries are set on a weekly basis with my calendar. Talked about it in the past, like create a structure for accountability as far as the clients I'm working with that week, the things that I'm doing to progress my business and to propel it moving forward. The time that I'm taking for myself, whether it's surfing, cooking, spending time with my partner. And then in addition to that, just spending also creating space in my schedule for nothing, kind of like free time, like free time in the sense that anything could happen. Just having a day completely open on a schedule. I believe it's important to, when you live so structured, a schedule for most part, I believe in having some structure, unstructured days as well. Kind of create a little bit of balance between the two. So that's one area in my life how I use boundaries was with my schedule. With my clients, there's pretty strict boundary, or I want to say strict, but there's pretty strong boundaries when it comes to the expectations of how the coaching is going to be done. How many days per week we're going to be meeting, how long the meetings are going to last for, what happens if you need to reschedule a meeting, what is also expected of you outside of our sessions. As far as, even if someone comes to see me 3 days a week, there's a lot that they can do on their own in regards to fitness and health that's going to propel them and move them forward. And as far as communication goes as well, I also have boundaries set up for how clients should and should not expect to communicate with me, as far as directly to my phone or through some of the messaging services that I use in my coaching apps. So those are some specific examples of how I create boundaries within the aspects of my coaching and in my life. I'm curious, Gunnar, what kind of boundaries do you set up for yourself specifically? Because I imagine with your coaching, it's probably fairly similar.
Yeah, the similarities are there. The time on my calendar to create my calendar for the coming week is the first boundary. If I miss that, I am immediately out of alignment, because I know when I create the schedule that's going to fit my progression towards my goals, I'm in a good place. Another boundary on the side of that is the language. So this touches on how I'm talking to myself, how I am communicating with clients, how I am writing programming, what kind of notes I leave. And those boundaries are, I want to affirm myself, continue to affirm myself in my journaling. I want to be curious and ask insightful and at times challenging questions to my clients to make the process there for them have more deep convictions to what they're going after. So language, my journaling, the questions I ask, and then continuing to make that part of my daily practice allows me to create the boundary of, all right, this is where I'm going. This is who I want to be. This is who I am right now. This is where I've been. And now I'm here. This is all I have is the boundary of, all right, what am I doing in this moment? And that is also a great way to get past the overthinking, overwhelm state of being.
Yes.
So
yeah.
another way that we can look at that boundary is when I've practiced my language repetitively, it becomes first nature to talk to myself in that way. So instead of getting down on myself and being my own evil inner workout partner in the middle of a challenging workout, I can recognize that I'm going down that woe is me, I'm not going to make it, whatever.
Get that awareness of yourself.
Yeah, awareness of whatever that inner dialogue is saying. I can detach from that moment and reset. My reset is coming from the cue that when I hear myself say something that is negative, negating, or out of alignment, I can reset because my cue in my journaling practice and the way I ask questions, I can come back. So how can I clean that up? A boundary is a practice in mindfulness around how I set up my time, how I choose my words, and how I can recognize words that are out of alignment. I believe those also fit in boundaries between others. So those were boundaries between myself and what I do. There's also boundaries that need to be created with others.
Yeah. Do you find the boundaries that you create with others, those start with the boundaries you create for yourself?
Yes. Yes. So when I know what I'm going after and I'm in practice of journaling and writing down my mantras and my intentions, I can confidently show up to others. Right? There are energy vampires out in the world that really just want to talk your ear off with nonsense. We've all been there. Sometimes I can be an energy vampire when I'm going unchecked. So this ability to detach, see those things, understand when to move on when you're in conversations with someone, whether that's someone close to you or someone far away, is a valuable thing because we can then gather our thoughts and move on. And I want to be
curious, Gunnar. I'm trying to like visualize right now, like that energy vampire and you interacting with them. Like, I couldn't imagine you just like turning your back and walking away. I imagine like is that hard for you to turn away to those kind of people, or is it just kind of like, no, like not going to accept this anymore? Because we want to be. I imagine I'm saying this because I'm projecting it onto you right now, because I see that happens to me a lot, and because I am a courteous person, I notice it challenging to like just walk away from something like that, especially a social situation. Do you have any experiences like that? Are you pretty well versed in dealing with those types of people?
Again, energy vampires are people you get to know. You know what they're going to get after, and typically it's nonsense. So yes, I see myself giving them time. And this goes into maybe some other topics of I don't know anyone else's story, and I may be the only person that listens to this person. And I think this is a thing why I coach is I have a gift of listening and helping people. And it would be selfless if I didn't show up with that part of my person, my ego. So, and those are all positives there. So, yeah, energy vampires are real. I recognize when they go on too long, and I can politely remove myself from that situation. However, I do have that moment of reflection, or I believe I show up with that discernment of this person may need me to talk to them.
Yeah, for sure.
So my like moral or my ethic for myself is to be polite and give people time.
For sure.
So
yeah, it's I imagine that's like part of the challenge as well, is because all these things you're saying, I feel the same about, as far as wanting, like, part of our superpowers as a coach is being great listeners. And when you are a great listener, sometimes you attract great talkers. And not to say that the conversations are always bad. It's more to say that there's always some purpose behind the conversation. Although, is that purpose behind the conversation, coming back to the goals, like, is it in alignment with your goals and what you're doing at that time? I imagine there's a lot of context to it as well. If you're at the end of your workout and you just crushed it and you're starting to cool down, there might be some space for a couple of minutes of idle chatter, right? Whereas if you're focused, you're getting ready to attack that workout, like, I'm sure that boundary is way stronger.
Totally. And again, it goes back to, all right, if I'm actively journaling and that's part of my daily practice, it's much easier for me to value my time.
Mm-hmm.
I value the process a lot higher when I'm in the process, when I'm doing those daily actions like you've touched on, right? We start with the outcome. The outcome can also be, in some instances, destructive. Like, let's say there is an energy vampire and I'm so focused on this outcome that I'm no longer thinking about who I am as a person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just thinking about the outcome. I know I've been in that situation. I've been a true asshole. And I think it's roundabout. If you listen to the last episode, we touched on this briefly. Like, I know that's not who I am internally. And when I'm honest with myself, I'm not an asshole. I'm a good listener. I value other people's time. I'm working on valuing my time better. That's a continuing thing. And yeah, if I'm totally focused on, all right, by August 2025, I'm the CrossFit Games champion, and I forget about these moments in the present tense, I'm not going to have anyone there when I get to that goal. So yeah, being a good person should be an aspect of our goal setting process.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful and fortunate to work with clients that value my time and value the goals that they set, as well as understanding my goals. And that's where the clarity comes in. I need to have boundaries around what I'm doing and why I do certain things, so I can relate that to others.
Mm-hmm.
And when I've related that, there's a camaraderie that goes way beyond big muscles.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine too, when you share those goals and that vision and you're interacting with someone and they are, let's say, detracting you from what it is that your focus is on that exact moment, and you've communicated that with them, you are in alignment when you say, I have to stop this conversation. I need to X, Y, and Z. And they should then understand, right? And if they don't, it's no longer your problem, it's their problem.
Right.
Yeah.
That's well said. Yeah. Yeah. And this reminds me of a quote, like if I expect anyone to do anything, I first have to do it myself. And that's where I aim.
That's where we come from as coaches.
Right. I truly believe the physical training programs, I would do everything that I write, or I have done everything that I write for a client, because that's within my experience. And I know my experience has value. Oh man, this is getting real deep.
Yeah.
which is important, right? Goals should be deep. They should take you time. And I'm shoulding us right now. When you put the time in and you put the intention into why, what, how, when you're going to achieve it, that's something we haven't touched on fully yet. But when we're going to achieve something and we have this structure, we can go really deep. We can invest more of ourselves into that endeavor. Right? It's not just, I would like to do this, crumple it up, throw it in the corner. No, it's by this date. For me, by August 2025, I'm the CrossFit Games champion. And I can keep going into that, why that's important to me. It's going to be different than anyone else's goal that might be the same thing. Right? It has to be personal to me for me to go towards it.
Yeah.
With conviction.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good transition right there to a final concept for our conversation today. Like, why is it like important to me? But like, to finish off kind of a conversation today, I'm curious, what like action steps would you suggest to people, or suggest people take around setting goals and creating a vision for themselves? What would be like the first step in the process if you're like brand new to this? And then I would say like that's kind of being for more of the general population. Then secondly, what would be the action step you'd take for the other end of the spectrum, the people who are very goal oriented, who maybe want to get a little bit more clarity around their goals? So two-pronged question there. What action steps would you suggest for just the regular person who maybe doesn't have any explicit goals? And what would you suggest as an action step for those overachievers out there with very specific goals already in mind, and how they could amplify those?
Great question. For the person that does not have explicit or they're not coming in with a goal necessarily, I love the question, what makes you excited? Right? What are things that excite you in life? And that is an emotion we can pull on. Emotion of excitement. You might feel that coming up in your chest when you're, seeing a friend. Okay. You could write a goal about, I want to see my friends more often. I want to spend time with the people I care about. That is a goal. That's a valuable goal. So understanding sensations and feelings, emotions, is a really fun place to look. What excites you? What makes you happy? What would you like to experience again? That could be a goal. It can be starting simple like that. For someone that's really new to this and is maybe exposed to the mantra idea for the first time listening to this, I would say, think about yourself a year from now. What have you done and how have you done it? And then write down, I have done this. I did it this way. And those can be a really nice place to start.
I like that a lot.
The second part of the question was someone that has really hard set explicit goals coming in to work with me, or this may be more general. If you have really hard set goals, continue asking why. Right. To touch back on what we were talking earlier in this episode of the expanded purpose, we can have our goal. That's a what we have done in the future. We can get a because statement. That's why we're going after that goal, why it's important to us. Ask yourself why that why is valuable to you. Right? Yeah. Continue to ask that question, why this is important, because that's in my experience, working with my own goals and with clients that have hard set goals, it gives us a better understanding of what the goal actually is. And it may actually change the goal sooner. And it most likely in that process becomes more enjoyable to reach. So those are my, if you're new to goal setting, write things down that excite you, what it looks like a year from now when you've reached that. And if you have hard set goals, continue to ask yourself why. Nice. Why is this important?
Nice. Yeah, I don't think I could have said that any better, Gunnar. I really like what you said about when you're referring to people who are new to the goal setting process, let's say, or don't have any like hard set goals in mind. Starting basically with that question, like what gets me excited, and using that prompt there to start a stream of consciousness that might open up more and more doors. And it just, the potentials and or the opportunities that will present themselves when you start thinking like that and thinking about things that get you excited. Like, wow, someone could get really, really into the goal setting process with that. So I really enjoy that. I was going to share something somewhat identical along the lines of journaling, like getting clear about like what it is that you want specifically, but you talk about things that get you excited. I would use probably language around desires, not just material desires. Also posing a question that I've been journaling a lot about recently. It's like, if you have all the money, all the things that create security for you in your life, like what would you be doing? And asking those kind of questions as well. And yeah, I really like that. Thank you, Gunnar. And I think what you said about the people with hard set goals was beautiful as well. The reason why I asked you that is because you work with a lot of high level athletes. So I imagine that's a scenario that you had encountered before.
For sure. And to touch on that, high level athletes may be inheriting a goal that's not truly theirs. So that process of asking why this is my goal, why is this important to me, may completely change the way someone acts, right? We are, as human beings, we inherit stories, and those stories can sway what we experience forever. And it's our job to ask ourselves, why am I doing this? Why is this important? Why do I think this? Right? Those questions, especially for high performing athletes, it can open up so many possibilities for, oh, I've never allowed myself to practice it this way. And then you have breakthroughs. In an example, I have an incredible client who's most likely, if he reaches his goals, he's going to be one of the best players in the world. And where he started when I first started working with him, he allowed himself to be so invested in every single detail being important to how he performs 12 hours later. And that mental energy, that energy vampire for himself, allowed him, or actually took away from his performance, because he used up all of his mental energy before he even got to the ice. And then he would get down on himself, and there's this, wheel of negativity that you can get swallowed up in. So that question of why is this happening like this? What am I doing that's leading to this outcome? And what can I do differently? Why does this person do something like that? And why haven't I tried that? Be curious. It comes back to that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Cool. Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we're at a really good point here. So if you made it to this point, I want to finish up with saying, if you're new to goal setting, Andrew and I would love to talk to you.
Yes.
We can only touch on so much abstractly in this conversation. When we have that relationship with a person, you're a human being. When we have a relationship with you, you're gonna learn something, and we as well are gonna learn something. So if you're interested, please reach out. I'm at Gunnar with an A, Regan, Gunnar Regan, and at Animus Coach, ANIMUS Coach on Instagram. Andrew, where can people find you for some help on goal setting?
You can find me at Swasey_fitness for more of a personal page, and then SwaseyFitness.personaltraining for my business page. Last name Swasey, spelled SWASEY. Mm-hmm. So those are two spots you can find me.
Excellent. Anything you want to depart with? This is a great conversation. Anything you want to leave with?
No, this is maybe a cliche goal setting quote.
Yeah, let me have it. What do you got?
I know this is a cliche goal setting quote. Whether you think you can, you think you can't, you're right.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it is a good quote though. There's
yeah, I'm gonna have to grab a tissue here and wipe up those cliche tears.
Oh man.
Well, thank you if you're still listening. We appreciate you so much. Share this with someone that may be interested in goal setting. We're very grateful to help anyone that finds this and sees the value in our conversations. If you have any feedback, let us know. Leave it in the comments. Message us directly at asabove_so_below_podcast on Instagram. And we will catch you on the next episode. Peace. Oops.